471 Waterloo Street was built in 1909 for Robert D. McDonald of Line McDonald and Company, cigar manufacturer.
And the size and importance and impact of this house eloquently describes the importance of the cigar making industry to London.
London in the 1870s was growing quickly, and Charles Pridis, along with his wife Harriet, were owners of a dry goods store selling items such as house furnishings, carpets, and ordered clothing. He lived at 471 Waterloo with his family until 1882. Then it was rented to a number of people until it was torn down in 1909. The house that currently stands at 471 Waterloo was designed by John Moore, a partner of the firm of Moore, Henry and Munro. The firm went on to design such buildings as the Dominion Building.
The MacDonald family originated in Scotland, moved to Ingersoll, Ontario. Robert MacDonald was born in 1862, married Martha Urd, September 1884. They had 4 kids, Marion, Stuart, Robert, and Harold.
MacDonald had joined cigar manufacturer Hugh Mackay and Company around 1888 as a clerk. He rose in the company to the position of bookkeeper in 1889, and in 1891 he struck out on his own with another Mackay employee, Henry Lyne.
In 1891 they opened Lyne MacDonald and Company, which was located at 346 Clarence. By 1910 the company had a warehouse in Winnipeg.
There were at least 21 manufacturers of cigars at this point in London's history, and they employed nearly 2,000 people, which was a large proportion of the working population in the city at the time.
Fueled by a tariff on German cigars, the Canadian cigar industry was booming in 1912. It was also customary to enjoy a cigar instead of a drink to avoid overindulging in bars.
The house proclaims his success, his prosperity. This is what I would call a confident-looking house.
MacDonald's daughter Marion was actually married at the house in 1913 to Lloyd Moffat, a local dentist.
People's houses are a representation of how they see themselves, I guess, and it's an opportunity to, display affluence.
This red brick structure was designed in the Queen Anne style, and there are a couple of key features that make the house stand out.
You'll find round-headed windows, square-headed windows, gables, and a very complex style, complex roof line.
It's got predominant porch and entrance columns. According to the rules of classical architecture, there are 4 orders of columns. They are Doric, Corinthian, Ionic, and composite. That's how the Greeks and Romans looked at those. And as we see them reinterpreted through the Victorian period, especially in and around London, some are more true to those rules, those classical orders, than others. And I think what makes Victorian architecture interesting and fun to look at and think about is to see what those influences are.
The portico somehow brings all this together. It is, in fact, a classical style portico with columns, with Corinthian capitals, and a classical pediment at the top with a Palladian style window. However, this has been married together very successfully with the rest of the house by repeating the exposed beams of the cornice there and the frieze around underneath the roof. On the left-hand side of the building is a very large rounded bay which has great character and presence. It is topped by a conical turreted roof which is very typical of the Queen Anne style. There are stone lintels over some of the windows, and you will see a variety of lintels in this house.
MacDonald could never have imagined that within a few short years the world would be going to war, and sending cigarettes to the field would be a way of showing moral support. Combine that with prohibition and the ban of alcohol sales, the cigar industry crumbled. At the beginning of 1930, Stuart and Harold MacDonald were still living at the home. Then it was sold to Major General Alexander Charles Spencer. A.C. Spencer was born November 19, 1887, to William Melville Spencer, originally from Germany, and Adeline Phillips from the United States. His father was the Mayor of London in 1892. Being a mechanical engineer, Spencer had an interest in the oil industry and used his brilliance at Sarnia's Imperial Oil and at his own firm. He joined the 1st Hussars and went overseas in World War I. Upon his return, he married Barbara Arbuthnot in 1919. Her father was John Arbuthnot, the former mayor of Winnipeg and co-owner of Pacific Coast Coal Mine. They had 5 children together. By 1935, the home is listed as vacant. The Spencer family had moved into the 35-acre home they had built on Windermere. Today, that property is home to the Ivy Spencer Leadership Center. Western University is also home to the memory of A.C. Spencer and his sister, with the Alexander Charles Spencer Faculty of Engineering building and the Josephine Spencer Niblett Faculty of Law building. The decorated veteran passed away December 12, 1970, and is buried in the family plot at Mount Pleasant Cemetery. In 1937, the Mocha Shriners are located at 471 Waterloo. They stay there until they moved one street over to their current Coburn location in 1955. In 1954, it is home to the North American Auto Association and Everett Sparling, a steward of the Mocha Shriners Mosque. The law firm of Siskin, Cromarty, Ivy, and Dowler took over the property in 1965.
We moved in to the building in 1965. The firm had previously been at 200 Queens. Don Cromarty had made the arrangements to move in there at the time. It was a beautiful property that had been converted from a house to an office complex before Don Cromarty and others moved into the property at that time. By the time I came, we had actually joined together 2 properties, 477, which is the yellow property immediately to the north of the property, and we had actually another property behind. So we had parking for clients, and we had the offices built there. 471 was actually a 4-story building. There were legal offices on the 1st and 2nd floor, and support staff locations in the attic or 4th story and in the basement area too. Don made sure that we knew, this was an important building in London, and we had to respect the building. So we tried as much as possible to keep everything the way it was, although you're trying to keep it efficient at the same time. So when I first started there, on 471, you entered from, the parking lot was at the back, so people would walk along the south side of the building and go on the stairs. In the winter time, from the 2nd story, we would have these gigantic icicles coming down, and you were afraid they were going to fall on people. So one of the first questions I had when I started there is whether I could throw a snowball that would knock the icicles down from the top. So that was one of my jobs. I at least came in after the time where we all had to take turns cutting the grass on Saturday mornings. Don Cromarty used to say that he'd come in and cut the grass at 7 o'clock in the morning because they actually had Saturday hours. And Don said the neighbors were all upset because the lawnmower was going so early in the morning. But those are the sort of things we had to do because we didn't have staff. You didn't have people to do things. Everybody was just sort of doing it yourself. You did your own gardening, you shoveled the walks, you did all that was necessary to carry on the practice at the time. We moved from there in 1991, came here in January of 1991, simply because we had grown so large that we couldn't be accommodated, although we tried very hard to try to construct a building connected with those 2 buildings so we could stay, but it was impossible for us to acquire enough property around to build a big enough structure to hold what we eventually thought we would be.
The building was sold a number of times between 1993 and 2006. Then in 2010, the house went back on the market.
I was first introduced to 471 Waterloo about 30 years ago. A friend of mine had become a lawyer for Siskin Cromarty, who owned the building at that time. And when I walked in and took a tour, I was just absolutely impressed with the magnificence and the architecture and just the feel of that building. And I started my business in 1987, and years later, I saw that this building was for sale. So I came through the building again, and it had deteriorated quite a bit from my original impression of it. But I felt that, you know, with the right amount of artisanship and skill, we could restore this building back to the way that it was.
When Global Warranty purchased the property, it was their goal to return the house to its former glory.
Some parts of the house were in fairly good condition, others were really in need of a lot of attention. Some of the rooms, the plaster had been damaged through water, was deteriorating. A lot of the wood had been mistreated, not cared for. Some of it had been painted over.
When I purchased this building, I was fortunate enough to have located a set of original drawings for the building. Those were invaluable to our entire team because they detailed exactly what had to be placed where and what the dimensions were and so on and so forth. Some parts were completely missing, so we really relied on those architectural drawings to guide us in the restoration, both on the exterior and the interior. We had all of the dimensions, we had all of the materials that were used, we had the specs to exactly what the tolerances were for the corners and the depth and the height and all the things that are required for any carpenter to recreate a piece of wood.
Because we really made virtually no structural changes to the floor plans, they were helpful in terms of maybe more in rooms such as the original master bedroom, so we could relocate where the original fireplaces had been. One of the walls actually between the guest room and one of the children's rooms, I believe at the front, had actually been moved at some point, so we put that wall back to where it originally started.
Well, we began the restoration in 2010, and we started with the exterior of the building. We had noticed there was a lot of deterioration in the wood that over the years and the ravages of time, it was unsalvageable. So we had to begin by starting with the architectural drawings that we were fortunate enough to have a copy with, and we were able to recreate and reconstruct all of the exterior wood facade that the building originally had. Well, when we examined all the brick, there were bricks that had deteriorated to the point where they were falling away, and we had to try and locate some bricks that were either an exact duplicate of what was used on the building or something that was very similar. We were very fortunate in locating the brick, which originally came from Beamsville, Ontario. We were able to find pieces of brick that were available to us in certain brick yards, along with the slate. The slate needed to be completely replaced on the outside of the building, and we were able to locate the exact same slate with the exact same hole punches that were used on the original building. So restoring the brick, cleaning the brick, washing the brick, remortaring where necessary. We replaced certain window sills that had fallen beyond repair, but we were able to put everything back pretty much the way, using the same materials and the same craftsmanship that was originally put into the home.
The plans of the house showed that at one time there was a second veranda on the north side of the home.
The original veranda itself was a wooden structure which had its own support beams along with the pillars and the cornice and all of those touches that you see throughout the house. Later on, I'm not sure when, the veranda was actually bricked up. Originally below the veranda, there was a door whereby all of the produce and all the things that were gathered up in the fall would be stored and used throughout the winter months. So the home was always well stocked with both cold storage as well as any dried goods as well.
The wide entrance has wrought iron decoration on the sidelights and transom and beveled and leaded glass decorating the inner door frame.
Once you step through the front door, you step into the vestibule, and that's where you'll notice all the leaded glass. That is all original to the home. We were very fortunate in the 100 years before we owned the home. There was nothing that needed to be done other than some minor cleaning of the lead, but all the prisms of glass are exactly as they were, along with the original interior door as well. Once you step through the interior door, you'll notice the two pillars. Again, they are matching the exterior. They are the Corinthian pillars. We stripped every single piece of wood down to its bare finish, or its bare wood, and then we reapplied our cherry wood stain throughout the building. You'll see that. Once we stripped off the very tops of these cornices, we noticed that there was gold leaf under all the accent points. So we found an artisan that was able to gold leaf all of the upper cornices, and you'll notice it on the details on the Spartans guarding the staircase, along with certain fireplaces that originally had some gold leaf to it. We installed a new efficient boiler system. However, we heat the entire home with that system still to this day.
The radiators, because they had been covered over with many, many layers of paint, and there's beautiful detail on them. So we took each of those out, since there was no heat to go through them at the time anyway. They were sandblasted back to the original metal and then repainted. And in most cases, we added a bit of a faux finish to the detailing to really give it some emphasis. And in those places where the rads were enclosed inside a case, basically, all of the iron grates across the front, again, were stripped down, and they were replated, in some cases with brass, and depending on the location and how they had been originally finished.
The first room inside the front door was the original parlor room.
When we restored that particular room, we noticed that it was covered up on the fireplace, and we were able to put back an authentic looking original fireplace.
One of the conversions we had to do was the lobby. It needed more space for people to come in. I guess it's nice because you had more people than you needed. And the fireplace in there took an awful lot of space, and it really restricted what you were doing. So the fireplace had to come out. And Don Cromarty was so disappointed in that he picked up the pieces of the fireplace, and when he built a house later, he incorporated that fireplace in his house.
This room was originally the dining room. Again, this room was stripped down. It was missing some pieces of wood, and we were able to bring it back to exactly as it looked back in its day. The fireplace is original. We've just had to clean up a few areas that were missing some pieces, but this is exactly as it would have looked back in its day.
Under the design originally, sliding doors that were to the east side of that wall, and those doors were turned into filing cabinets, and then there was a closet area that was on the other side, because again, that one was designed to be able to go into the next office, and of course you had to have privacy. So some of the adaptions that you're seeing are things that we did in order to keep the room looking like it did, but still allow it to accommodate privacy and at the same time cabinets. That was always the senior partner's office, and we spent an awful lot of money restoring that at the time to bring it up to the level. It's also the meeting room that we used. Like we run the firm through a management committee. That was also the location where the management meetings would take place. It was sort of a nice thing. We kept the fireplace and kept everything in there, and tried. The furniture that was in there at the time we were there was designed to sort of keep the whole atmosphere of that room. My little washroom office was right beside it, and the fridge that was in the boardroom actually came in behind and was open, so I had to be careful, because when I was in there I could actually hear what the partners were talking about. So I would usually try to absent myself when they had their big meetings.
In the old cigar room on the main floor, with the original drawings, the bookcases and the fireplace were right there on the original blueprints. including the drawer at the bottom, the glass doors. So the glass was there, but in very rough condition. So we had that restored as well, and all the wood was refinished. The tiles around the fireplace are original and were in really good shape, so those were just cleaned up and varnished to give them a little bit of sheen.
In the middle of the home lies the original grand staircase.
This beautiful staircase was totally in a dilapidated condition, and we had to pretty much rebuild the entire staircase. So new risers were put in, the railing was disassembled completely, stripped and put back together, along with all of the wood paneling. We had to have that manufactured, again, exactly to the specs. And you'll notice at the very bottom of the staircase, that is the original light that was installed when the home was built in 1909.
The Queen Anne style also featured stained glass in great abundance. And this house still retains much of its stained glass. It's wonderful.
The stair landing is dominated by a large bowed, colored, textured and painted Tiffany leaded glass window, initialed KAD.
This beautiful stained window is absolutely the focal point of the home. These stained glass pieces are originally Tiffany glass window, and as the sun comes across the home and it gets brighter, and then as the sun sets, the whole entire stained glass looks different every hour.
On the second floor, the octagonal bayed room was the original master bedroom.
Again, you'll notice it has the heating with the radiators. It's got a beautiful fireplace. And I chose this to be my office for a couple of reasons. One, we continue on with the turret and the rounded windows. And I'm here early enough in the morning to see the sun as it comes through. And it's just a beautiful, warm place to begin your day.
When they started to bring the 100-year-old home back to life, they knew there would be some surprises. But what they found left them speechless.
When we started working on this room, we noticed from the original drawings that there used to be a fireplace there. You notice that the home has 3 distinct chimneys. It was heated with fireplaces as well as the steam. So we were able to remove some of the wall area, and we came across a signature from a man who had actually worked on the home and had signed his name back in 1909 as one of the carpenters having worked on the fireplace. So again, those architectural drawings were invaluable for us because we were able to put back the fireplace exactly as the architect and the family would have envisioned it at the beginning of the construction. When we were restoring one of the doors on the main floor, we found a time capsule. This block of wood we found so interesting. It was signed by an individual who had worked on this home and trimmed actually these original doors. And in addition to that, we found the ruler that he had left us, that he had used to measure and cut all the trim and wood that he had placed around the door. A really amazing time capsule 100 years later.
Each of the upstairs bedrooms contained a basin and a mirror. And at the end of the hall was the main bathroom.
Once we had peeled away the layers of time and carpet and tile, we noticed a beautiful black and white marble original flooring. And we were able to bring it back to the way it looked 100 years ago.
This home has 4 distinct levels and is just under 10,000 square feet of living space.
They would need a staff to keep the home. One of the features of this home is a dumbwaiter. Back in its day, all food would be prepared in the kitchen and sent up to the bedrooms as requested.
The drawings of the house revealed that a 4th floor closet was cedar-lined for fur coats.
The 3rd floor was simply used as storage.
The upper attic has access to the roof, where you can see the whole city. It shows just how big this house really is.
One of the coolest things about this home is the safe. It's a walk-in safe. It's enormous. It's got a 4-inch steel door with a combination lock, and I don't know what they would have stored in here.
We had to have a vault to put Wills in that was fire retardant. So it was that was the safe. I guess from listening to that, the safe's still there. Obviously, we had to make a deal when we were moving that we weren't going to have to take the safe out.
The push-button hardware would have been original to the house. We were able to source those and all of the other pieces through a place in the United States called the Antique House of Hardware. So we brought those in and replaced the ones that were there.
We loved the building. You really knew how much you loved the building when you moved out. That's when this painting that's behind me here is when I had that painted just as we were going, because it was an important part of my career, and I loved the building.
It has such great warmth. It's a wonderful building to be in. It has a great atmosphere. It has a degree of elegance without being stuffy, shall we say. It's just a warm and comfortable building. It's great to be here.
I love the look of it. It looks majestic. It looks like it belongs in the southern states somewhere. And the entire feel of the home just reeks of Edwardian elegance.